Welcome to the LoveWorks podcast. My name is Chris Duncan, and my wife Jennifer and I are marriage coaches and ministers in our local church. We've been married for over 20 years and have 6 wonderful children. Over the years, we've experienced infertility, miscarriages, become parents, had career changes, fostered children, and adopted triplets, which among many other life experiences have helped to shape us, our marriage, and our family. We hope to share some of the things we've learned to help others with their journey to have a successful marriage and a strong family, while keeping a focus on our faith as a guide. Thanks for listening, and as always, remember, love works, so let's get to work. Welcome back to the LoveWorks podcast. My name is Chris Duncan, and I'm here with my extremely caring wife, Jennifer Duncan, and we're so honored you've chosen to be with us today. A little bit of housekeeping as we get started. Number one, I apologize if you hear snoring in the background because one of our Frenchies is extremely loud right now. And also, if you hear any sudden yelling in the background, 2 of our children, our oldest, our teenagers, are in the game room, which is adjacent to our studio, otherwise known as our dinner table.
Super professional.
Yes, we're highly professional. We are in the Duncan podcast studios right now. So, hey, if you're new to the show, we release new episodes bi-weekly. So please subscribe, like, and share. Comment also. Please comment if you have an opportunity to do so. Wherever you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any of the others, we're listed on pretty much all of them. So please share it with your friends, your family, your frenemies, anybody that you'd like to share this with. So thank you again for listening. And we'd love to hear from you. So reach on out to us through our social platforms, LoveWorks Podcast on Facebook, LoveWorks Podcast on Instagram. You can direct message us. If you want to go old school and email us, you can do so at loveworkspodcast@gmail.com. So thank you again. Let's go.
All right. We're going to move right into our What's That segment. I feel like I've said this a million times, but for all of our new listeners,
That's right.
our What's That segment.
Every week we have new listeners.
Yes. It's a little segment that we do that kind of lets you see into our lives a little bit, what goes on here in the Duncan family during the week, and the funny questions or things that happen we like to share with you. And so you can get to know us a little bit better. This week, mine it's not super funny, but it's just it's funny thinking about like how kids view life. My kids are really funny because I think that they believe that we are extremely rich somehow. I'm not sure.
And we are not.
Where they got that notion. They are going to be very bummed one day. But the triplets' birthday's coming up, and one of the triplets, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm thinking, okay, her sisters have asked for like Barbie cars or some sort of bird that sings in a cage. I think there was a cat with a bottle. And so I was, thinking, okay, let's add this to our target list. And Rowie says, I want a new trailer. And I was thinking, okay, maybe she means like a doll trailer, a Barbie trailer, a trailer like a Barbie RV. Do they have that? I don't know. Maybe. She's like, no, a new trailer, like a bigger trailer. So all of us could go camping in a big trailer. And I was like, we already have a trailer. She's like, I know, but it's too small. We need a big trailer. So that's what I want for my birthday. So apparently she thinks our budget is like, I don't know, 70, 80 grand. I'm not really sure what she's shooting for. But yeah, so kids, you got to love them. But she's going big this birthday.
Yes. It could be my fault. I'd go in there and whisper in her ear, Rowie, tell Mom we need a bigger trailer.
She did say something about Dad saying we needed a bigger trailer, so that might be true.
Oh, man. We are beginners in the RV world. And I just got something that would sleep all of us. It does, but no slides yet. And so we've found out with a family of 8, we need little bit more room, but we're keeping this one for at least another season. We'll go from there. Definitely not
Yeah.
for her birthday though.
Yeah. I'm still not quite convinced about the trailer life. And I'm not sure I'm a camping person yet. So
Pray for us, listeners. Pray for us.
that'll be our next podcast. What to do when your wife hates camping.
All right. So I'm going to get a little greedy today. I'm actually going to share a few. This past weekend, not this weekend that we're recording, but the weekend before, Jen was out of town. She was able to go to a ladies' conference, and the kids stayed home with me. And so we had a blast. I took a couple days off work, and we hung out at home. We went out and had some adventures. But one of our particular adventures on Saturday, we went out and we went to this really cool park in Pasadena, right by the Rose Bowl. It's like a pirate park, and it's right behind the aquatic center right there. And we were sitting there, and Harper comes over and she's telling me something, and she looks behind me. She's like, "Dad, there's a pool right there." I'm like, "I know, that's amazing." So the only thing is we have to jump over that big wall to go swimming. And she looks at the wall and she's like, "We forgot our swimming clothes." So the only problem was not jumping the 20-foot wall. It was we didn't bring our swimming clothes.
Oh man.
I know. And on this same trip, we had lunch, and then we went to go get dessert. We were looking for a frozen yogurt place. And Quinn, for some reason, started talking about playing the piano. She really wants to learn how to play the piano. And Nikki Riles, if you listen to this, she talks about you every single day, giving her piano lessons. So be ready. So anyways, she's just going on and on about finding a piano and playing it. And so we're driving in. Boston's like, "Quinn, what are you talking about? Why do you keep talking about the piano?" And she's just rapid fire. Quinn talks really fast. She's like, I'm gonna play piano. So finally I said, "Okay, Quinn, if we see a piano, we find a piano on this adventure, you can play it. Just go right up, sit down, just start playing it." And we're like, there is no way that's going to happen. So we go to the frozen yogurt place. We get our frozen yogurt, and we're walking back to our car, and we happen to walk past a small storefront that is a music store / they also give lessons. And what is right there in the window? A piano. And Quinn sees it, and she almost dives through the window trying to get to it. Unfortunately, or fortunately, they weren't open, so she couldn't get in to play it. But that was so crazy. I mean, Boston looks at me, he's like, "Of all the things, like, are you kidding me?" So that's my what's that for this week. So
Awesomeness.
Our show today, it actually may turn into a two-parter. Normally I say, it's going to be short today, and we go for like 17 hours. But today may be a two-parter. We're going to talk about our adoption journey. And it's pretty crazy how it all kind of came together and all that. So we're going to share that today. So stay tuned. If we get through it all today, then great. If not, I'll be watching the time. I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time, but if we get to that point where I think, you know what, we need to go to a second episode, then we'll do that. But so I'm going to kick it off with our adoption journey, our decision to adopt. We have been married now 22 years. And early in our marriage, we decided, hey, in the first couple years, 2-3 years, we want to travel. We want to buy some things. We want to just get to know each other a little bit better, even though we'd known each other, since we were little kids. But as you know, when you get married, you move in with somebody, you learn things about them you never knew. And so we wanted to make sure we had that time. And so we did that. We get a couple, 2-3 years into our marriage, and we decide we're going to try to start a family. And we were having problems. We went to,
It didn't happen.
It didn't happen. We went to the doctors, and the doctors, this is going to be a different episode, so I'm not going to go too in depth into this part, because we are going to talk about infertility and struggles with that. And that is a struggle. That's a thing that a lot of people face. We faced. It's tough. It's grueling. It's at times traumatizing.
Mhm.
And so we'll talk about that on a different episode. So if you're listening to this one, and you are struggling with that, we're here for you. We're praying for you. We understand where you're at, but our God's able. So, but back to the adoption. So we're having problems. It wasn't happening. So we sat down and we decided, you know what? If we can't have our own biological children, then you know what? Let's go ahead and let's look into adoption. There's plenty of children out there that are in need of a home, and whether there are biological children or not, we're going to love them with everything we have. So let's start that journey. Let's get into adoption.
So life took over, right? And you always think, oh, I'm going to do this. You make plans, and then it just never seems like the right time. I think that's true whether you're having children biologically sometimes or you're adopting. And so we were busy in our careers, busy in our ministry, and we kind of put it off a little bit. And it was going to happen, but it wasn't something that was going to happen right away.
Yeah.
And so, lo and behold, a couple years later, we ended up getting pregnant with our first son. And so we were overjoyed, obviously. And then another 3 years later, surprisingly, shockingly, we got pregnant again.
Another one.
And so we had our 2 boys, and we were like, good, we got our 2 boys. 2 kids and a dog. We got the American dream. We're good to go. And we thought, that's okay. The adoption journey had always been on our hearts, but we thought, okay, we have our children and we're set. And then probably, I don't know, I think Grayson was about 3 or 4.
He was about 3 or 4.
And we were in a service, and they were talking about adoption, and it just kind of reawakened something in both of us. And I think we were both too scared to say anything to each other, because we're like, okay, we kind of thought we had passed that point, and we had gone ahead and had our children, and we were done. We were finished. But the Lord spoke to both of us, and we came back from that service and had a conversation and decided, you know what, adoption was on our heart for a reason, and God put that in our life for a reason, and we decided that we were going to pursue that.
And we had, those of you that are listening that are married, we had that unspoken conversation first in the conference. The speaker was getting ready to wrap up, and he was actually the head of an orphanage, and he was like a children's mansion is what they called it. And he's wrapping up, and Jen looks over at me, and I looked at her and I said, I know. Okay. And so we came home, and like Jen said, we had the conversation.
So I think it happened that night. It was.
We went back to our hotel room.
Okay, we know.
Let's go for this.
So I am the type of person where when I set my mind to something, it has to happen right away.
Yes.
If I'm all in, it's happening.
Yes.
So we got home and we started researching. We had kind of researched it a little bit before this, but we started researching different.
Well, in the beginning, our research kind of focused on
international
adoption, and we had collected a lot of information adopting out of the United States.
Yeah, and so at this time when we started looking into it, of course, a lot of the laws and things have changed over the years, and it's made it a lot more difficult now. It's not impossible. So if it's something that, is in your heart to do or you've thought about it, it can still be done, but there are a lot of obstacles now that there weren't when we first started looking into it, 20 years ago. So we started looking at that. We looked at, private adoptions. But for some reason, this time around, we started thinking about fostering and possibly adopting that way. And which is so weird because we had never really thought about going that route before. But the more we talked to people around us who had fostered and stuff, the more that burden kind of grew for both of us.
Yeah.
So we went ahead and we started the process. And there's, when you go into something this big, I mean, this is a huge decision. There's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of fears. Everyone's going to tell you.
Everybody has an opinion.
Yes.
And
And
everyone has
most
a
of
horror
them,
story.
yes. And most of them are like, don't do this. You got your kids. There could be problems. There could be this. There could be that. There could be. Look, everything in life comes with risk, right?
Absolutely.
Everything, having biological children comes with risk, having adoptive children, having children in general, no matter how you get them, comes with risk. Living
Walking
life
out your door
comes with
a risk.
Exactly. There's nothing in life that's risk-free.
Yeah.
But we have to realize that there's some things that are worth the risk.
Absolutely.
And being a parent, however the process works out, is worth the risk. And these children are worth the risk.
Yes.
And so we talked about these things. We talked about our concerns. We really dove in and researched pretty much. I'm an over planner. I am. I understand that about myself. I overplan everything. I have to know everything about everything that could possibly happen. So we read books. We listened to podcasts. We pretty much researched every possible thing that we could. And the good and the bad thing about this is that children are individuals. Your family is different than any other family.
Yeah.
So even if you research everything, it's not your journey, and your experience is going to be unique.
Absolutely. It's going to be different than even all the information that you got.
But that's not a bad thing.
No.
So it's really important that okay, go in eyes wide open, but know that, you know what, I'm open for whatever happens. And we're just going to go ahead and I remember one of the classes, not to interrupt myself, but I remember one of the classes that we took, one of the foster classes, the teacher said, don't get impatient because it's going to work out for you.
Yeah.
Even if it seems like, oh, this is taking so long, or, we're not getting matched with a child, or, what it doesn't matter how long the process takes. It's eventually going to work out. And that's so true.
It really
I've
is.
never seen a case where somebody just was like, oh, this didn't work out. As long as you're willing to put in the time, put in the effort, and be patient, it's gonna work out for you. So that was our initial introduction into adoption and why we eventually chose fostering. We realized there was such a huge need when we live in Los Angeles County, and Los Angeles County has the most children in the foster system in America by a huge percentage.
I hear that in America.
In
just
America, yeah.
Los Angeles County.
Yeah, it's unreal. So there's tens of thousands of kids that are in the system, and I think in California there's 1,000 children a day that go into the system. So it's pretty immense, the need that's out there for people who just want to love kids, just want to be there for kids. And these kids are not ruined.
No.
They're not broken. They're hurting sometimes, but they're not unreachable. And I think that's the most important thing to remember if you choose to go the route of adopting through foster care.
So with our choice to go through adopting, foster to adopt is what it's called. We, like Jen was saying, we went through the classes, and one of the classes you're kind of icebreaker type thing. You're going around and introducing yourself and whatnot. I came into it, I think, a little different than Jen came into it. We're all different people. And I came into this like, these children that come to me, they're my children. And foster children, adopted children, whatever they are, they're mine. And I'm going to do whatever I have to protect them and whatever I can to provide for them. And so I came in somewhat guarded, I think, and just with I don't know, an attitude of like, okay, you're not going to tell me what to do. These are my kids, and these bio parents messed up, and it's their fault. They ruined it. Now these children are mine. And so that's how I came into it. And I did change over time with that. But in the class, going around and came to me and they're like, give us a word that describes yourself starting with
the first letter,
of your name. And so my name's Chris. And so I'm like, caring. I'm caring Chris. It's like the third day of the class and everybody starts laughing. And I'm like, what? So none of them thought that caring was the best for me not because I didn't care for the children, but because I didn't care for the bio families. And so I obviously had to adjust. And so we went through that process of adopting the foster classes, and we took additional classes for medically fragile children. We had sat down and after
basically got our college degree.
Yeah,
that's what it felt like afterwards. It is one thing I failed to mention though is before we made any of these decisions, we realized as a family, these children were not only coming into our home and they wouldn't just affect my husband and I. Mm-hmm. These children were going to be a part of a family unit. We already had biological children. So we set the boys down. I believe at this time they were 5 and 7 or 8. Mm-hmm. And we set them down and we talked to them and we asked them what, told them we were talking about adoption, made sure they were on board with it. And then we gave them the ability to allow us to, or we gave them the ability to tell us what they wanted, what their roles were.
Absolutely.
Because it's a different, it's a different thing. You have to make sure that your whole family's on board because this isn't going to be an easy transition. It's easy to love your children, but it's not always easy to parent your children. Yeah. And so it was really a whole family decision. We had to get everyone on board. One of the stipulations with the boys is they didn't want to change the birth order. Mm-hmm. So Boston wanted to be the oldest, Grayson wanted to be next in line, and then all the children we adopted had to be younger than that. So that was one of the non-negotiables. We made sure that was something that we honored for them, that we kept that birth order and we didn't, try to talk them out of it.
Yeah.
So let your children be a part of the process. If you have children already, let them be a part of the process of doing this.
It's a family decision, like Jen said. You have to know your family, and your entire family has to be on board.
Absolutely. So just thought about that when we're talking. Sorry, I lost my place. So we talked about the different routes. There's so many different routes, and there's going to be a right one for you, though. Mm-hmm. Talk about them, talk about the pros and cons with each of them. I don't think there's a wrong one, but there are definitely ones that are going to be easier on your family.
For sure.
Whether
it's domestic, international, foster care, whatever it may be, there is a right one for your family. But like Jen said, make sure that you talk with them, you're all on board, and do the research. We said, it could go anyway, but make sure you're prepared, right? You
Yeah.
prepare as much as you can, and then when you're whichever route you choose to go, you take it as it comes. You adjust, but at least you have as much information as you possibly can up front.
And the best way to prepare, I think, too, is to talk to people who've done it.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of times when you're going through something like this, there'll be all these people that have, like different agencies and stuff. They're going to tell you the things they need to tell you to get you to sign, right? To get you on board. Talk with people who've done it those ways. Find out the ins and outs, the pros and cons, issues they've had. And make sure that it's the right fit for you, your family, your finances, because adoption can be extremely costly.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that you are prepared on all fronts, because there's unseen costs as well.
Yeah.
So, you could say, okay, well, it's going to cost this much for me to go to the country and do these things, but there's all these unseen costs as well. You don't want to bankrupt yourself before you get your child,
Yeah.
So, and really, I mean, adoption is open to anyone at any spectrum. As long as you can afford a child,
Yep.
there's a way to adopt.
Mm-hmm.
So there are different avenues, even if you're like, well, I can't afford, $50,000 to adopt a child. There are different avenues that you can go through where different agencies, different grants, different ways of adoption.
And your company there's companies that have that you work for may have an adoption assistant type thing. So look into all of that.
So many different ways now. So just be prepared, do your research, and make sure that you are going in eyes wide open. So talk to people who've done it that way. There's always going to be unexpected challenges, but as long as you've prepared ahead of time, it's going to be so much easier to overcome those as you go along.
Exactly. So, and with that preparation, you'll see home studies that come along. And like with us, since we were foster parents first, they had to come into our house and we had to lock everything up. And it can be very intrusive because they're going through every single part of your life and where you live, where your children are going to sleep, all that kind of stuff. But again, all of that, it can be annoying. It can be stressful, it can be but it is so worth it. So we made the decision. We went through the classes, all that, and we right after we get licensed, our home gets licensed, certified. We get licensed and certified. We get a phone call, and they're like, "We have a baby for you. She is about 4 months old. She is going towards adoption." And we need to remove her from the home that she's in because of the biological father has found where they live, and he's extremely violent and aggressive and all this other stuff. So we're like, yeah, bring her on. So they bring, I won't use her name, but I'll just call her Baby B. They bring Baby B to us. And I walked out to the street to meet the social worker. And right when the door opened, she looked at me and smiled at me with the biggest smile. I can see it in my mind's eye right now. And I brought her in and I told Jen, I said, we're going to adopt her. She's ours. She's not going anywhere. And so we're talking about the process right now, right? So in that process, because we were the fifth home, I believe, for her.
I think
in just
fourth or fifth, yeah,
a few months because of the troubles with the biological father. There was a lot of trauma that she had, and so she bonded very quickly with me. I rocked her to sleep every single night for several months. And we just loved her so much. And we're about 9 months in, and they contacted us and let us know that her biological mother had done everything she needed to do. She's actually a great woman. That's where I said my opinion of the biological parents changed in the process. My opinion changed because she was a great woman and is a great woman that just got herself into a tough situation,
Mhm.
and she worked to get herself out. But uh, so at about the year mark, we returned baby B back to her biological mother. That was, and in that process, we actually received another baby that
Mhm.
they told us that we would be able to adopt, and then they changed that also,
Mhm.
and so we had to bring her. So we had to. They call it surrender. I think that's such a legal term that sounds terrible.
She moved to a long-term foster family home.
And that was extremely tough, extremely, extremely tough for our family. And you might be thinking, oh, well, that settles it for me. I'm not going to foster. I'm not going through
Mhm.
that. But I wouldn't change that process for anything in the world.
Mm-mm.
It made our family stronger. It made our children stronger, even though it hurt. I'm not one that um, gets depressed or anything like that, but I'll admit that when we brought baby B back to her biological mother, I was a little bit depressed. I had
A
to.
little bit is an understatement.
It is an understatement. I struggled with that. I fought. I was angry with God, and He spoke to me, not audibly, but spoke to my heart through the process. And so we're dealing with that. But in the meantime, one day I'm driving, I'm at work, and Jen calls me and she's like, hey, they just called me for adoptive placement. I said, oh, really? Awesome. And she's like, it's for triplets. The social worker's going to call you. I told them they have to call you. So I'm going to hang up now because they're calling you. And she hangs up. And I'm like, well, I didn't even have time to process it. All of a sudden, my phone's ringing. I'm like, hello? And they're like, hello, Mr. Duncan. This is, so-and-so with the DCFS. And we have an adoptive placement for triplets. And I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. And again, we had mentioned earlier, there was some things from our classes that we had learned and talked about where with medically fragile children that we didn't think we could handle as a family because with different prenatal exposures to drugs and alcohol and other things, there's just challenges that come along with that. And so they're like, oh yeah, healthy babies. they're
They did tell us, but I think at that point, I I think sometimes God just steps in, like, I
yeah,
think at that point God stepped in because it was just they give you, like 5 seconds to decide. They're like, "Yeah,
totally.
oh, your life might change completely, and you got 5 minutes to decide." You're
So in
like,
5 minutes.
okay,
So in 5 minutes, we said yes. Within 48 hours, we had bought a new vehicle to be able to transport our family. We bought
3 car
three car
seats, 3
seats,
cribs,
3 cribs,
a
all the
triplet stroller.
yes. And Jen said that it's a process. It's going to happen. It's
Yeah.
going to come through. Well, they called Jen 48 hours after and said, I'm sorry. Actually, there's another family that has been in the process. We didn't realize at the time. And, they're going to get the girls. I told you at the beginning, right? These are my children. I'm
We've
going
never met
to,
them, but they're ours.
I'm going to fight for them. I'm going to provide for them. So I hopped on the phone and called everybody. I almost called the president of the United States of America. And I let them know with no uncertain terms that these were our children, and I would be coming to pick them up on Monday, as previously planned, and they better have my babies ready.
And they're like, there's a crazy person. Take him off the list. Do not call him again.
Oh, man. So, long story short, that other family decided it was going to be too much work for them. And so we show up on Monday and we get to meet our beautiful babies. And they actually had them named at the time A, B, and C. So they could identify them. And
A, B, and C.
And we met them so tiny. Harper was, well, Quinn was the youngest.
I don't think any of them were even 5 pounds yet.
They were born at, Quinn
they were
was
almost a month old. But,
almost a month old. They were in the NICU. They had to spend time in the NICU.
Yeah.
They had a lot of prenatal exposure, and they had a lot of stuff in their system and health issues because they had bone decay, their lungs, all kinds of stuff. And Quinn was about 2 pounds. Rowan was a little over 3 pounds.
Yeah.
And Harper was almost 4 pounds, or a little bit over 4 pounds when they were born. And we went into the hospital, and they were born at a Catholic hospital. And when we walk in, the nurses see us, and she said, "I've been praying for you." She said, "That other family, I knew they weren't right. But right when you walked in, I know we've been praying for you. God just told me you're the family." I said, "Well, you're right. We are the family. We're here. I'm here to take home our babies." And so we got to meet them. We got to take 2 of them home a couple days later.
Yeah.
And Harper had to stay almost
another 2 days.
Another 2 days after that. So, and the hospital was a couple hours away from our house. Mm. So for those 2 days, I would drive down and every day so I could feed her, change her diaper. And the hospital was doing that too, but we wanted, that connection. So we brought all of them home after about 6 days after we
after
met,
the whole process.
After the whole process of meeting them and bringing them home, all of a sudden we have 5-week-old triplets.
Yeah.
Which we had to go into an adjustment process of parenthood there.
It is quite different. Kind of going back to some of the concerns and issues with adoption, I know a lot of people are worried about bonding and what that looks like, and if it's different than bonding with your biological children. I think bonding is different for every person. Mm-hmm. Some people bond very quickly. Some people bond over time. And I don't think that it's going to be different whether it's your biological child or an adoptive child. I tend to bond really quickly. I imprint, right? Yes. I'm like, okay, I see this kid, it's mine. But the emotions and the love that I felt when I saw my biological children and when I saw my adoptive children wasn't any different. Agreed. And there's actually science behind that. Yeah. There's studies where they have done research on that, and the endorphins and the dopamine and all that kind of stuff, oxytocin or whatever, all those feel-good things in your brain, chemicals in your brain, are no different whether your child comes to you through adoption or whether your child comes to you through biologically. So I know sometimes people are worried like, oh, I won't be able to love my child. When you meet the child who's going to be your child, they're your child. They're your child. You see them and I can't explain it, but you just know, okay, this is my child. And that won't change. Now, I felt the same way about my foster children. Yeah. And some people when they think about the foster journey, they're worried like, oh, it'll be too hard for me to let them go. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy because it is the hardest thing that you will ever do.
Absolutely.
But when you do it, you realize that that child was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you only got to spend a short amount of time in that child's life, the time that you spent with that child was worth it. I always think it's funny when people say that. And I'm like, well, it would be no different than saying, well, I'm not going to have a child because if something happens and that child dies, I won't be able to handle it, right?
Yeah.
Like we talked about this in the beginning. There's risk, right? There's risk in everything. Not fostering because you can't handle it. You realize your capacity to love is much greater than you think.
Yeah, and when you love those children, you genuinely love them, whether they're with you a day, a year, or forever, it changes their
Absolutely.
life. That genuine and true love that you show that child will have an impact on their life, no doubt.
And it will impact your life as well.
Yes.
I don't love the children who have returned to their families or gotten adopted that we fostered any less today than I did back then. But I understand that I love them so much that this route, whether it was reunification or adoption with another family or whatever their path was, that was the right path for them. And I love them enough to understand that that's what was best for them. And that's what I want for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want people to feel like I can't do this. And I think everyone goes into fostering or adoption feeling like that, feeling
I did. I was like, no, they're mine.
I can't give up this child because it's that, we can't imagine losing a child. But you will be able to do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going into this for the right reasons, if you love that child, if you love the children in your care, you will be able to do it again and again and again, even as hard as it is.
And here's where Jen and I deviate a little bit. I said at the very beginning, I get to do this podcast with my extremely caring wife. With all of our foster children, even our daughters that we've been able to adopt now, she cared for the parents as well, the biological parents. When they had visits, she was loving and kind to them. She let them know that she was praying for them. She showed them the love of Christ. At times that was tough for me. I'm just going to be 100% honest. And if you know me, you know I'm a pastor. And so you're like, what in the world? You're supposed to love people. I do, I promise. But that was tough for me. But Jen loved those those biological parents also. And baby Bew, who went back to her biological mom, we've had the great fortune to be able to still be somewhat a part of their life and be able to send them Christmas presents, birthday presents, all this stuff. And the biological mother reaches out to Jen. And recently, a few months ago, she texts Jen this beautiful message about she didn't know what the love of God was like, but Jen showed it to her. And now she's remarried. She's living for God. They're having Bible studies in their home. They're working in the house of God. And all of that was precipitated because the love that Jen showed her through the process, not just loving her babies, but loving her as well. So you can do it. So I was there. I'm going to tell you, I was there. They messed up, nope, I'm not going to do this because I can't, I don't want to have those children go back. Lay that all aside and allow God to use you, allow you to positively impact these children's lives. And in a lot of cases, you'll positively impact the biological family's lives as well.
Well, I think, every family has a story. And sometimes we go into adoption thinking that these people don't want their children or that, they're terrible people who are abusing their children or something. And sometimes that's just not the case. Life is different for all of us. And there are some times when, as a mother, we realize that I think the hardest thing would be, but sometimes that's where we end up, that we're not the best thing for our child. And giving up your child to another person has to be the most sacrificial thing you can do and the most loving thing you can do. Because we know there are other ways, right? If people don't want babies nowadays, there are other ways. So loving your child enough to allow them to live and have a life is very commendable to me. And I think we can be judgmental, but we don't know what got these people to these places. And sometimes it's circumstances that happen to them, and not always completely of their own choosing.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important. The other thing you have to remember too is when you get into this, you realize that biological family is now your family.
Mm-hmm.
Your kids will not be separated from that biological family. Maybe physically they're separated, but there's always going to be an emotional tie, whether they knew that family or didn't know that family, to their biological family. And we have to be really careful as adoptive parents not to tear down,
Yeah,
or to try to direct how our children feel about their biological roots.
absolutely. It's a loss for them,
It
and
is.
whether you are like us and were able to, get your children when they were babies, right, month old,
Mhm.
or whether you get them as teenagers, it's a loss for them. And so I think what we've done is we never talk negatively about the bio family. We are right age and stage, what's appropriate for their age and their stage in life. So we talk about them not being, well, sick, other, kind of verbiage along that lines, not being able to provide for them, but, loving them enough to allow them to be adopted by us, and
Mhm.
how we had prayed for them and God had brought them to us. And so that's how we talk about it and share that with them. And something to kind of go back to, Jen, was talk about bonding. And sometimes people get really caught up on nurture and nature.
Mhm.
Are they going to, maybe there's some bad things in that family lineage that is going to come up, and when they're teenagers.
Mm.
The nurture side is so unbelievably strong.
Yeah.
It is crazy. Harper she's the oldest of the triplets. She is the exact same person as our oldest son, Boston. They are the same person,
They are. It's very strange.
the same attitude,
I don't know how we duplicated that.
the same likes, everything. Their diets, I mean, just everything.
Yeah.
Even how they acted, how Harper's acting now as a 7-year-old, how Boston acted when he was a 7-year-old, or almost 7.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So if you're concerned with that in the adoption process, don't. Yes, there is some biological things, right? Like Jen said, they're going to have that tie and they'll want to know at some point in life. So we have photos and we have written down some memories and that kind of stuff. And when they're older, if it comes to a point where they'd like to meet some of that family, well, we have the information for that to happen. But don't be afraid that because your nurturing, your love will impact them and will shape them into who they are and the person they
Yeah.
are.
And it's not a me or them situation.
Yes.
It's a all of us situation. Your child is a part of two families
Yes.
and we mold them into one through those children. So it's not like, oh, if you love them, you can't love me, right? We have more than one child and we love them all.
Yeah.
So they can have more than one bio parent, more than one parent and love them too. It's not they're not betraying you by loving their bio family. And I think that's something you really have to make sure of. I think we'll probably go over some of the steps. We'll probably have to do another episode and go over some of the steps and stuff because I know this is taking a while. But did you want to talk about the benefits and challenges that you felt like it had on our children and our family?
Well, we'll go a couple minutes into that, and then we'll wrap this up because we're already at 50 minutes. So we try. I'm sorry, we try to keep our episodes to like 40 minutes or less. We don't do very good with that, but benefits. The benefit for the entire process has given our sons
empathy,
and
yes,
a love for people on a level that they would not have had otherwise.
Yeah.
And to be able to look at somebody, maybe they've messed up, and even if they have children, I think it's given them the opportunity to be like, you know what? Things happen. Sometimes people do it to themselves. Sometimes people are just in situations because of proximity, but it's given them, I think, a clarity of you can still love those people and you can show them empathy and not shun them.
Grace, yeah.
Give them grace. One of the most heart-wrenching things I ever seen, we sat across a table from one of the bio parents, and in her eyes, I saw no hope.
Yeah.
I'd never seen that before in anybody. And I grew up in a pretty rough area, but just no hope at all. No hope at all. And when she talked to us, she talked about no hope. And so we shared the Lord with her, and we shared how we were going to love her children and take care of them. But I think that has rubbed off on our children. I think that is a benefit for our sons and all of our children. We talk about these things. Hey, when you grow up, how many kids do you want and all that stuff? And all of our children talk about wanting to adopt. All of them talk about wanting to be foster parents. And so I think that's a huge benefit that has come from this process, this journey that we went on.
Absolutely. On our next episode, like we've been planning this all along, we'll talk about supporting your child through the identity exploration. We'll talk about any advice or things, issues that we've had come up. I know the girls are still little, but we'll kind of talk about how we navigated some of those things, questions, things like that. We'll talk about adjusting to parenthood because no matter how you come about being a parent, it's going to be an adjustment.
We'll talk about the 2 cans of formula a day we went through.
We won't talk about the diapers because I'm still traumatized. But we'll go over some of these and then some of the steps that it takes to get to the adoption process. So stay tuned for that next episode. All exciting things.
So if something has spurred in you listening to this, you want to help, you want to do something. Maybe
or if you have questions.
Yeah. If you have questions, reach out to us.
Please reach out and we can address those as well.
But also if you're at that point where, you know what, you're not quite ready to foster, you're not quite ready to adopt, you can still help. Like Jen said, LA County, we have the largest Department of Family Services department in all of America.
Huh.
And there's so many avenues where you can help us personally. Jen is a part of the AV Foster Friends.
Yeah.
She's on the board, and there's so many areas that they help foster families, foster parents. So that's just one example. You can reach out to a group like that and see how you can donate money,
Time.
just really anything. You can get involved. You can be a part of that. So that's kind of like my call to action. If you are feeling led towards that, I would definitely admonish you to do so. And so always with our episodes too, as we've talked, we probably have talked about the Lord a little bit more in this episode than we have before, but we are faith-based. So I always like to have a biblical perspective with our episodes. And so I chose Psalm 127:3, this New King James Version. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. It doesn't say, behold, your biological children. It doesn't say the fruit of your womb.
Yeah.
It talks about children as a heritage, and it talks about the fruit of the womb. And so I think that's a very fitting scripture with talking about the topic of adoption. And so with that, I think it's a good area for us to stop. And so I'd like to close out this episode in prayer. Thank you again for joining us, and tune back in, not next week, but the week after when we release our next episode where we continue with this. So, dear Lord, we thank you for this opportunity, Lord, to share just a little bit of our journey into adoption tonight. And in the coming weeks, we're going to share some other areas where you helped us so mightily, miraculously, really. And so we thank you for that. I pray for anybody right now that has listened to us, whether they listen to this episode when it's released, the day of release, or 6 months or 6 years from now, and they feel led to help a child in foster care or adoption or any way that they can. Lord, I pray that they not just are inspired, Lord, but they act upon that inspiration. Lord, we thank you, we praise you, and we worship you. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
As always, remember, love works, so let's get to work.